Greetings, traveler. Over the years, I have played D&D with all sorts of props, and they are of varying qualities, right? So you can have a very high quality figurine like this one, representing your cool um, main character or character of the player, or you could go super simple and use just a simple chess piece like this one, which is probably 10 to 100 times cheaper than this type of figurine. This particular one is from Kingdom Death, so yeah, definitely on the pricey side, but very cool. So today what I want to talk about is when it comes to picking the props for our D&D games, what's the benefit of using the more detailed and expensive ones, if there is a benefit, and what's the alternative if you choose to go with something much more simple, and ultimately if it makes any difference on the enjoyment of the players of the game. If you don't know who I am, my name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for 15 years now, and I've been playing D&D as a DM mostly for 25 years or so. So for the few times where I was a player in other DM sessions, I saw some truly fantastic props. One friend of mine, in fact, had so many figurines and so many dungeon props that he had the perfect thing for dungeon walls, dungeon entrances, staircases, benches and tables, and all these crazy little miniature things to use in his D&D game. And I thought, well, that looks really cool and all. It must cost a fortune to just buy them and make sure they look good. And if you buy them unpainted, you have to paint them, which explained the lack of paint in most of his props stack. And that got me wondering, is such a thing worth investing in? And start little by little gathering all these props for walls and doors and traps and all that? Or is going with a much more simple and much cheaper approach just as good? So I think the answer will definitely depend on the situation, right? And the budget and your personal taste for these props. So I cannot talk about your preference, but I can perhaps share a little bit about the way I think about this. So the reason why this very cool guy is from Kingdom Death is because that game has figurines all in the same style, and they're very consistent, and that game has its own little theme. Everything you buy for that game is very self-contained, right? So all the figurines look good with each other, and the whole game is made so that you can customize them, and no matter what sort of campaign you're running, all the figurines basically look as they should. That, I found, is not very easy to do in a generic D&D game. Yes, you can have a cool sword guy and a cool axe guy and a cool bow guy, but the enemies are going to be vastly varied, and they're going to have different sizes, and they're going to have uniqueness to them. And you will basically, if you want to match your figurines to your adventures, you will be limited by what sort of figurines you have to use in your game. And that, for me personally, felt a bit constricting. So what if I wanted, for example, to have a blue dragon in my next adventure, and I didn't have the figurine? That would mean that I would have to go out, find the figurine that fits the monster. We're talking about dragons, so what age of dragon? Is it a young one? Is it an elder one or an ancient one? Are we going to be able to find exactly the figurine we need? And then hopefully paint it too. So for me, that seems like a lot of effort. So I never chose to go down that path. However, if I did go down that path, if I did find a good enough collection of all the monsters and all the characters I could ever need, then perhaps going with this approach would have been better. And 3D printing is something that, of course, vastly improves this situation. So if you want to have, let's say, a troll in your next adventure and you don't have the figurine and you can 3D print it, then I think if you just use green plastic or something, that's good enough, and you don't have to paint every single thing you create for the adventure. I would personally go down this path if I had a 3D printer and I was willing to do all that. But I didn't. So what's the alternative here? I have this extremely cheap chess set that I bought from, I think, a supermarket for a similar situation where somebody wanted to play a game quickly. And when I did a quick D&D game, I thought, instead of bringing the figurines with me and worry about if they're going to break or not, why don't I just bring this chess set with me and make things easy? So that's what I did for a trial run. And I discovered something that is extremely elegant and extremely fun when using these chess pieces. So chess typically has these types of pieces, right? So the rook and the knight, and the king and the queen, the bishop, and the pawn. So that's at least 6 types of different figurines, you could say, different props that could each represent a different character. So the main paladin of the group could be the knight, and I don't know, the archer could be the rook, and so on. You can imagine how this could represent one player each, and then each player knows which figurine represents them very, very intuitively. If the party had any pets or any allies and so on, then it would be easy to represent them with the pawn piece, because it's nice and small and generic, and most people from chess, just by knowing chess, they have an intuitive understanding that the king is more important than the pawn. So that does some of the heavy lifting for you when it comes to introducing players to these pieces, especially if they are new players to D&D. Also, on a side note, having chess pieces on the D&D board kind of makes people think in a tactical, strategic sense, just like chess itself, which I know it's a different game and all that, but in my experience, that only helps, because people automatically start thinking in, can I move this far? Can I make this attack? Which is helpful, I found, for new players using these pieces. And then, of course, it goes without saying that for enemies, you can very easily do something like use the black pieces for enemies, and that communicates to the players that, you know, this is probably just a supporter character or a simple enemy. And when the time comes for the big boss, you can use something like the enemy king, the black king, to show that, you know, this is a big adversary here that you have to defeat. And so I think by now you get the idea of how these chess pieces can be easily transported, and they're inexpensive, and they can be used to represent characters. But there is one detail about this. So if you noticed on my very cool guy figurine here, it's not just the body that's helpful here. So it doesn't just visually represent what the character is supposed to be like. He also has the base. So the size of the base is basically the same, about the same size as a 5-foot square in D&D. And that's helpful when you want to show how much space each character takes. So bigger characters typically have bigger bases, not just for Kingdom Death, but for most tabletop role-playing games. So you know that a troll takes more space than a player character usually, and a dragon takes much more space. So if you have these tiny chess pieces, how do you give players the sense of space and how far they can move and so on? Because let me show you again. The base is completely different between these two pawns, these two figurines. The solution I found, also inexpensive and very simple in form, is if you have a piece like this, then you can use a ruler to talk about whether something is within that piece's reach or not. Or conversely, if you're using a gridless system, as I'm using often, then you can use this ruler here to say that, look, if your piece starts here on the table, then if its target is anywhere on this distance, if you can reach your target within one ruler's length, then that's as far as you can move and you can reach your destination. Otherwise, you will have to do a dash or take an extra turn to get there or something like that. So by using an equally simple prop, the ruler, that helped me explain to the players how far things are in combat, regardless of the size of the actual prop. And again, I use the chess pieces here. If you have pieces from a different board game, I think that's fine. There's no need to use chess specifically. Chess just has the convenient aspect of the pieces having a certain shape, and you can have the bad guy, and the bad guy's lieutenant can be maybe this knight, and so on. Anyway, that's it for my thoughts on chess pieces and other props and extremely detailed miniatures for D&D. To summarize, I think that if you can manage to have consistency in the theme and the looks of the miniatures, and it's, you know, financially feasible for you to get them, then I think that makes for a great experience. If that's a little hard to do in your current situation and you're worried about consistency and its figurine actually looking like the thing it's supposed to be in the game, so you don't have to, for example, use a dragon figurine when the enemy is a troll and you used it because you didn't have a troll figurine, or perhaps if you can 3D print just the right thing, then that's great. If not, if this is all a bit too much, then I think using an inexpensive chess set or a set from another board game is just as good. And in some ways, it can free the player's imagination a little bit, because they don't have to think that the thing that I'm looking at right now is exactly what that thing looks like in the game world. So if you see that the DM is using a pawn for the enemy, then that pawn could be anything you want it to be in the game world, and the players don't have to think too hard about it. Anyway, my throat is dying again, so thank you so much again for watching, and as always, have fun.